We start with a dietary hypothesis that almost everyone accepts as fact. We've all heard that saturated fat is bad for our hearts. This paper dug up a decades-old trial to see if swapping it for vegetable oil actually saves lives. The conclusion: it lowers cholesterol, but it doesn't stop people from dying. It's a massive claim, but there is a missing piece to this puzzle and an industry connection that changes how we read the result. The dial is set to 0. Let's evaluate the architecture. To test that claim, we need to see how the study was built. The MCE is a double-blind randomized controlled trial designed to test whether replacement of saturated fat with vegetable oil reduces coronary heart disease. The framework they are analyzing here is the gold standard for medical science. And they published this historical reanalysis in the British Medical Journal, which is one of the most rigorously vetted publications in the world. The journal pedigree checks out. The original trial designers clearly understood the rules. Study participants, the principal investigator, and all other study staff were masked to group assignment. Both the doctors and the patients were kept completely blind to who was eating the vegetable oil and who was eating the saturated fat. Independent blinding. Exactly right. That precision carries right through into the statistical analysis. The intervention group had significant reduction in serum cholesterol compared with controls. The math driving that conclusion is incredibly clean. Throughout the abstract, the numbers remain perfectly consistent with the historical records they salvaged. But jump to page 11 to see the exact statistical probabilities reported for the hazard ratios. There is a natural, unforced spread in the p-values, with absolutely no signs of data manipulation. The internal consistency. No issues here. That same mathematical purity shows up in the starting lineup. Table 3 shows the characteristics of the serum cholesterol cohort who received diets for 1 year or more. Look closely at these baseline statistics. If you ask a human to fake a sequence of coin tosses, they usually make it look too perfect, alternating heads and tails evenly to simulate a fair game. But true randomness has messy streaks. The same is true here. The statistical probabilities comparing the two groups at the start of the trial range wildly, from 0.14 to 0.94. That messy natural spread proves nobody was quietly handpicking healthier patients for the vegetable oil group. Baseline randomness. All clear. And the final check on their math is the hardest to fool. The coronary atherosclerosis score for the 75 patients was 24.4. We ran a headcount check on these autopsy scores. Think of it like dividing a restaurant bill. If 3 people split a tab equally, the individual share cannot mathematically be $10.33. The math has to obey the number of people. Here, the average score of 24.4 perfectly aligns with the sample size of exactly 75. The mathematical consistency is completely sound. The numbers passed every check we threw at them, which makes the next finding deeply uncomfortable. We did not recover specific details on implementation of randomization and concealment of allocation. This paper is a reanalysis of a trial from the late 1960s. Because it is so old, there is no modern pre-registration where the rules were written in advance. But much worse, the original instruction manuals are lost. The authors admit they do not know exactly how patients were assigned, or if the assignments were kept sealed. That is a massive blind spot at the very foundation of the trial. The assignment details missing entirely. And they didn't just lose the instruction manuals. We were unable to recover the complete MCE dataset, including all randomized participants. They lost the patients. Over 9,000 people were originally randomized, but the authors could only find long-term data for a fraction of them. And skip to the next page, where they admit they only recovered about half of the original autopsy files. Without a predefined primary goal to anchor against, that massive drop in sample size severely weakens what this data can actually prove. A complete dataset. There is no trace of one. 4 minutes. 1 study. 0 spin. Subscribe. Because of that missing data, the researchers had to make a compromise. Our analyses used longitudinal data for the 2,355 participants who received the intervention diet for a year or more. Evaluating a diet based only on the people who perfectly stuck to it for a full year is like evaluating a brutal workout program but only counting the people who survived it. It ignores everyone who dropped out, which warps the real-world picture. They applied highly appropriate statistical models to the data they had, but the foundation is cracked. The analysis partially holds up, but not fully. Still, their presentation is remarkably transparent. Figure 5 shows the risk of death from any cause by diet assignment. The charts themselves are drawn cleanly, with no distorted axes or visual spin. The author's narrative stays strictly true to the data on the page, and they explicitly offer to share the anonymized dataset with anyone who asks. The reporting integrity checks out. So far, clean math, honest reporting, but massive holes in the historical data. And then we reach the final disclosures. The authors declare no financial relationships with any organizations that might have an interest in the submitted work. The trial itself was funded by the U.S. government, but senior author Joseph R. Hibellin is listed as an advisory board member for the Seafood Nutrition Partnership. That is an industry group that promotes omega-3 consumption, which directly competes with the omega-6 vegetable oils this study is criticizing. He never disclosed this to readers. The independent story gets complicated the moment you look outside the paper. Which brings us to the final verdict. 70 out of 100, and under normal circumstances, that's a passing grade. But this study called itself a randomized controlled trial when the original allocation details were completely lost. That's not a design weakness, it's a misrepresentation of what kind of evidence this is. That single deception means every clinician who cites this paper is treating it as stronger evidence than it actually is. That triggers an automatic discard. The science behind the mortality findings? Independent Cochrane reviews have confirmed it largely holds up. But this specific historical paper cannot be the definitive proof you rely on.